All right, so, I think we've all been there, right? Scrolling through those celebrity home tours online, kind of fantasizing about winning the lottery and having a walk-in closet bigger than our entire first apartment.
Oh, absolutely. I know I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, but today we're going to go a little deeper than those glossy photo shoots and really take a deep dive into Pete Hegseth's Tennessee estate.
That's right. And we're not just talking about square footage and price tags. We really want to unpack, the design choices that he made, the lifestyle that this home reflects, and maybe what it all says about his personal values.
The stuff that those home tours don't really dig into.
Right, exactly. Those little details that really tell the story. And the exciting thing is, we actually have some amazing sources for this. Detailed descriptions, architectural insights, even some glimpses into Hegseth's own motivations for choosing this property.
Oh, that's perfect. So, for all of you Cribs fans out there, get ready because this is going to be a deep dive you won't want to miss. Buckle up, design enthusiasts, curious minds. We're about to uncover the story behind this multi-million-dollar Southern charmer.
Absolutely, and let's start with the basics. The property is located in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. It's estimated to be worth about $3.5 million. But even before we step inside, the exterior already tells us a lot.
Right. I mean, those stately double-story white columns, the classic brick facade. It's definitely sending a message, right?
Yeah.
Architecturally speaking, I'm curious, what would you say, what's Hegseth going for here?
Well, think about those iconic Southern mansions, right? The
Yeah.
symmetry, the proportion, that connection to a historical legacy. Hexet's home really taps into that visual language. It's a deliberate choice for sure, but it's not a simple replica either. There are some modern updates throughout, so it's not stuck in the past.
And here's where things get really interesting, okay? Because this isn't just a mansion on a perfectly manicured lawn. This property includes a small farm. Chickens? A horse? It's not exactly what you picture when you think Fox News commentator, is it?
It's true. It does kind of make you wonder how do we reconcile this image of a multi-million-dollar estate with this seemingly simpler, more rural lifestyle? Is it genuine, this connection to nature, or is it a carefully crafted image? Something for us to ponder as we make our way inside.
Oh, definitely. And speaking of insight, can we talk about that grand entrance? You walk into the foyer and bam! Incredible wrought iron staircase that just draws your eye upward. I mean, polished white tiled floors, soaring high ceilings, and then this intricate, almost delicate wrought iron design. For those of you who love a statement piece, I mean, come on.
Right. And I think what's so striking is how the space manages to be both grand and intimate at the same time. The high ceilings, the white tiles, they create the sense of expansiveness, but then the wrought iron brings in a touch of warmth, maybe even some romance. It's not just a staircase, it's a work of art.
Oh, for sure. And then, you flow into the living room, which seems designed for, both those big gatherings, but also those cozy nights in. The sources emphasize the floor-to-ceiling windows. Imagine that, just bathed in natural light, waking up to those Tennessee sunrises. Beautiful.
Yeah, but it's not all light and airy though. You've also got that massive fireplace, right? Carved wooden mantle that just screams cozy winter evenings. It really caters to both moods. Very clever from a design perspective.
And I read that the living room has double height ceilings. I know it looks impressive,
Yeah.
but is there a practical reason for that beyond the aesthetics?
Oh, you're right. It's not just about looks. Double height ceilings, they actually improve airflow throughout the entire house. So you get that visual wow factor, but it's
Yeah.
also a functional choice. It's like one of those hidden design details that you only find in these high-end properties.
Yeah, it makes you think, oh, that's smart.
Exactly.
Okay, but before we move on, we have to talk about the library. It's described as Hegseth's personal sanctuary, and I can totally see why. Built-in wooden shelves overflowing with books, another fireplace, of course, and sliding glass doors that lead to the outdoors.
Yeah, I can already feel those, cozy intellectual vibes.
Me too.
And it's interesting because the library seems to represent a different side of him compared to, let's say, the grand foyer or the more modern kitchen. It's almost like stepping into a different world, but within the same house.
Yeah.
And, given Hegseth's public image as this thinker and commentator, it does make you wonder if this is where he does a lot of his work, preparing for appearances, maybe doing some deep thinking. It's not just a design choice. It's a glimpse into his process, maybe.
Right. Okay, enough daydreaming about cozying up in Hegseth's library. Let's move on to the heart of the home, the kitchen. From the descriptions, it sounds like they've really struck that balance between functionality and warmth that so many homeowners, I know I do, dream of.
Yeah, they really have. The sources mention wooden cabinetry, granite countertops, a central island with some decorative detailing. It's clearly a high-end kitchen, but they've managed to avoid making it feel cold or sterile.
So it's not all like stainless steel and sharp edges.
No, not at all. They've softened it up. They've added warmth through the materials and the layout. There's even mention of a hanging metal light fixture that adds a bit of character without overwhelming the space. It's those little details that really elevate a design, from nice to truly special.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, but before we get too carried away planning our dream kitchens, let's talk about the master bedroom. The descriptions paint it as this truly serene retreat. They use the phrase oasis of understated luxury. What do you make of that?
Hmm. It's interesting. It's a fascinating choice, especially when you consider, the more grandiose aspects of the house. It seems to suggest a preference for comfort and tranquility over maybe flashy decor or over the top amenities. It's almost like saying, look, I have the means to go all out, but I'm choosing to create a space that's calming and restful.
Well, so like a king size bed, soft carpeting, maybe some nice luxurious linens, but no crystal chandeliers or gold plated faucets.
Exactly. It's about that quiet luxury, that subtle elegance that's becoming increasingly popular. It's about the quality of the materials, the attention to detail, the creation of a truly peaceful atmosphere. And it really does say something about his priorities, at least in the context of his home.
Okay, I'm sold on the bedroom, but I'm dying to hear about the outdoor spaces. Give me all the details: patio, pool area. I need some backyard inspiration.
All right. Picture this. A covered patio with brick columns, ceiling fans, overlooking a sparkling swimming pool surrounded by lush greenery. It's the quintessential picture of southern living, seamlessly blending the indoor and outdoor spaces.
Oh no, that sounds like a party waiting to happen.
Right.
I'm also curious about that balcony they mentioned with the breathtaking views. Is it really as impressive as it sounds?
Oh, from the descriptions, it sounds incredible. It's like a private escape with these stunning views of the Tennessee countryside. They mention red cushioned seating that just pops against all that lush greenery, perfect for enjoying a morning coffee or maybe an evening sunset. It's like having your own private perch overlooking this picturesque landscape.
And that connection to nature really seems to be a recurring theme throughout the entire property. Even within this luxurious setting, they've managed to bring in those natural elements and create a sense of peace and tranquility.
Absolutely. Makes you wonder if that was a deliberate choice, a way of balancing the grandeur of the house with a more grounded connection to the natural world. It's something to keep in mind as we continue our deep dive.
Okay, so before we wrap up this first part, let's take a step back and kind of look at the property from an aerial perspective. Imagine sprawling lawns, wooded surroundings, those auxiliary buildings. It really paints a picture of someone who values space and privacy.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and it's interesting to consider this choice, right? This location, this property size, in the context of celebrity real estate. There seems to be this trend among public figures seeking seclusion and control over their environment. It's like creating your own world, away from the prying eyes of the media and the public.
So we've got this mix of classic Southern charm, modern luxury, and this yearning for a connection to nature, all kind of wrapped up in this desire for privacy and seclusion. It's a fascinating puzzle, isn't it?
Oh, it really is, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface. So, we've talked about all these different features, this blend of Southern charm, modern luxury, and maybe even a touch of that country gentleman persona. But I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts? Does anything surprise you knowing what we know about Hegseth and his public image?
Honestly, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the farm aspect is definitely not what I expected.
Right.
It's not what I picture when I think of, a Fox News personality, right?
Right.
It seems like there's this interesting tension between the traditional rural image and the undeniable luxury of the estate.
Yeah, and that tension is what makes this deep dive so intriguing, right? It's easy to make assumptions based on those surface level observations, but the more we dig, the more complex the picture becomes.
So let's dig right. One thing that I've been thinking about is the location. Goodlettsville, Tennessee. It's not exactly, typical celebrity enclave. What do you think drew him to this particular spot?
Well, one of the sources mentions that he specifically chose to move to Middle Tennessee to kind of escape the feverish lifestyle of New York City. So there's definitely this desire for something different, something slower paced, something maybe more aligned with his values.
Right, and that ties into the whole farm aspect too, right? And it's
Yeah.
not just about um, having a big house. It's about, having space, having land, maybe even a bit of self-sufficiency.
Exactly, exactly. And remember, this is all happening against the backdrop of his public persona. I mean, he is a conservative commentator,
Yeah.
someone who often speaks about faith and family values.
So is it possible that the house itself is kind of a way of projecting those values, like a visual representation
Mm.
of his beliefs?
It's certainly a possibility. Think about it. The classic Southern architecture, the connection to nature, the emphasis on family spaces, those could all be seen as aligning with a more traditional conservative worldview.
But then again, there's that element of undeniable luxury, right? I mean, this is not exactly a log cabin in the woods.
No, no, not at all. It's a multi-million-dollar estate with all the bells and whistles.
So where does that leave us? Is it hypocrisy? Is it just a matter of personal taste? Or is there something more complex at play here?
I think it's more about recognizing that people are complex. We can hold seemingly contradictory values or desires, and our homes often unintentionally reflect that complexity.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, or in
Yeah.
this case, a person by their house. But speaking of the house, I'd love to hear your take on some of the specific design choices. What stands out to you as particularly interesting or revealing?
Well, one detail that really struck me was the emphasis on understated luxury in the master bedroom. It's not about flashy decor or over-the-top amenities. It's about creating a sense of calm and serenity through high-quality materials and a minimalist aesthetic. What do you think that says about him?
Well, it definitely seems to contradict the stereotype of the flashy, attention-grabbing celebrity.
Yeah.
It's more subtle, more refined, almost like he's saying, "Look, I have good taste, but I don't need to shout about it."
Exactly, exactly. And that can be a powerful statement in itself. It's a way of signaling your values without being preachy or ostentatious. It's that quiet luxury trend we see with a lot of influential figures these days.
Interesting. So it's not just about the design itself, but also about, what that design communicates to others, almost like a coded language.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking at a house, we're looking at a reflection of a person, their values, their aspirations, even their contradictions.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. The location, the architecture, the design choices, they all kind of weave together to create this narrative about who Pete Hegseth is, or
Yeah.
at least who he wants to project himself as. But are we missing something here? We focus so much on the physical space, but what about the context of his life outside of the home?
You're absolutely right. We need to broaden our scope a bit. We've talked a lot about the house itself, but we haven't really discussed his personal history. What shaped his worldview? What are his known values and beliefs? How does this house fit into his larger narrative?
Those are some really great questions, and luckily we have some additional sources that can shed some light on his background. Let's explore those in the next part and see how it all connects to the story we're uncovering here. Yeah. So we spent some time on the bricks and mortar, the design, but let's talk about the man behind the mansion, right? I mean, we've
Yeah.
touched on his public persona, but who is the real Pete Hegseth?
Well, that's where these additional sources really come in handy. They offer a pretty fascinating glimpse into his background, and I think it really adds a whole new layer to our understanding of the home.
Yeah, fill me in. I mean, what kind of backstory are we talking about here? What shaped his worldview?
Well, for one thing, he's a military veteran. He served in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
Wow.
So that experience, undoubtedly had a profound impact on who he is, shaping his views on, things like patriotism, service, sacrifice.
So we're not just talking about a talking head on TV.
Right.
This is someone who's lived a life of action and commitment.
Right.
How do you think that informs his design choices?
I think it's almost impossible to separate those experiences from his aesthetic preferences, right? That emphasis on sturdy materials, the connection to the land, the desire for a sense of security and privacy, those could all be seen as stemming from his military background.
Yeah, like that idea of wanting to create a fortress, a place of refuge after being in these challenging environments.
Exactly, exactly. And the sources also highlight his, his academic achievements. He's a Harvard graduate, so that suggests a certain level of intellectual curiosity and ambition.
So we have the military veteran, the Harvard graduate, and of course the conservative commentator. I mean, how do you see all that fitting together?
Well, it definitely paints a picture of someone who's driven, who's disciplined, and deeply committed to his beliefs. And I think those traits are definitely reflected in his home. The attention to detail, the carefully curated aesthetic, that sense of order and purpose. Those all speak to a deliberate and intentional approach to life.
It's like he's applied that same discipline and focus that he brought to the military and to academia to his home design.
Exactly. But as we've discussed, there are also these interesting contradictions, right? The yearning for a simpler life alongside the undeniable luxury, the traditional values alongside the modern amenities. It's just a good reminder that people are multifaceted and our homes often reflect that complexity.
So maybe the question isn't, is this house hypocritical, but rather, how does this house represent the various facets of his personality and his worldview?
Yeah, that's a much more nuanced and insightful way to approach it, I think. And it's a question that I don't think has, a single definitive answer. It's open to interpretation, which is what makes this whole deep dive so engaging.
Right, and ultimately, it's up to each of us as listeners to draw our own conclusions. We've laid out the evidence, we've explored the various angles, and now it's time to kind of put on our detective hats and make sense of it all.
Exactly. What does this deep dive reveal to you about Pete Hegseth?
hmm
About the intersection of wealth and values, about the stories that our homes tell.
For me, it's just a good reminder that there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Right.
Whether it's a celebrity's home or our own living spaces, the choices that we make about our surroundings, they reflect our values, our aspirations, even our contradictions. And sometimes those choices spark more questions than answers.
And that's a good thing, right? It keeps us curious, it keeps us thinking critically, and it reminds us that the world is just full of these fascinating complexities that are just waiting to be explored.
Yeah, well said, well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Pete Hegseth's Tennessee estate.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of ground, from architectural details to personal histories, and I hope it sparked some interesting thoughts and conversations for you out there.
And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring, right? Dig deeper into the topics that intrigued you, seek out new perspectives, and never stop questioning the world around you.
That's a wrap on another fascinating deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those homes stylish.